Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
You're listening to the Skift podcast. On Wednesday of last week, Skift broke the bombshell news that Expedia Group, the world's leading online travel agency, had decided to end its long-standing partnership with Hopper, a rival OTA that Expedia had nonetheless been providing hotel and vacation rental inventory for many years. What's more, Expedia used their announcement to voice concerns about several practices employed by Hopper that they perceived to be detrimental to consumers. I'm Jose Marmolejos, Skift's lead audio and video producer, and on today's episode, I speak with the journalist who broke that story, Skift founding editor and executive editor Dennis Schaal, as well as Skift research analyst Pranavi Agarwal, who only 2 months ago published the definitive deep dive report on Hopper's business model and performance, about why this business relationship fell apart so suddenly and dramatically. We listen back to some clips from Dennis's interview with Hopper CEO Frederic Lalonde at the Skift Global Forum this past September, get some unique insights from Pranavi's unprecedented access to Hopper's business while she authored her report, and we dig into what this rupture could mean for Hopper, Expedia, and the entire online travel industry. If you enjoy this conversation, visit skift.com for breaking travel news and in-depth travel research covering airlines, hotels, journalism, startups, and business travel. Enjoy the conversation. Dennis, Pranavi, welcome to the podcast.
Hey there.
Hey, Jose. Nice to be here.
All right, let's jump right in and start with the story that you broke last Wednesday, Dennis. I shared a little excerpt from the statement that an Expedia spokesperson cited in your article. Do you mind just reading that for us, Dennis?
Sure, no problem. Expedia Group terminated its supply relationship with Hopper today. The reasons for termination are simple. As Hopper's product has evolved, we have determined that its features exploit consumer anxiety and confuse customers, leading them to purchase services they neither need nor fully understand. As leaders empowering the B2B travel market, we have a commitment to travelers and to our supply partners that we take very seriously, and as such, we are ceasing placing our trusted supplier content on the Hopper platform.
Wow, spicy. Obviously, it's a very strongly worded statement. And a very public one from one of the biggest online travel agents in the world. We'll get back to the back and forth between Expedia and Hopper a little later on. But Dennis, can you start off by walking us through the events that led up to the story hitting skift.com? I mean, selfishly, I want to know how a Dennis Schaal scoop happens. But more than that, can you tell us where we are today with the Hopper and Expedia business relationship?
So this wasn't a traditional scoop in that I found out stuff that people didn't want me to know. But let me tell you how it happened. So obviously there's been friction between the two companies. Hopper's been growing at a rapid clip over the last few years, probably taking market share from Expedia and others. They have their fintech stuff going with those high margins that they've been getting. So in May, Expedia had a partner conference at their headquarters in Seattle. And I got the chance to interview their CEO, Peter Kern, one-on-one. And of course, I had to ask him about Hopper, and he had some tough things to say about Hopper. These are my words, basically him saying that Hopper was selling useless products that were essentially a consumer ripoff. And what he did say is, quote, "I think they have a lot of products around insuring against every little thing. It's going to rain. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. The customer's not winning in that trade," unquote. So basically, Expedia tipped me off that they were going to, on that morning, that they were going to end the relationship. But it all goes back to me interviewing the Hopper CEO, Fred Lalonde, at Skift Global Forum in September. And I asked him, are you a fan of airline cancellations as a way to boost Hopper's assortment of so-called fintech products? And Fred replied, quote, "I love anxiety. I want people to be worried that the logistics around the trip might not be great. And I want to provide a complete, delightful antidote to anything going wrong." So I think Expedia sort of picked up on that anxiety thing. And I think that's the reason they went to me with the story.
That's fascinating. I actually have that clip loaded up. Let's run that.
The reason we are able to grow is because of our fintech products. And so our global strategy, it's very simple, is when consumers come to Hopper, they spend an average of $50 more to buy the same travel stuff that they could buy anywhere else. This is new money.
Explain to them how that works.
Yeah, so you could freeze a hotel room, a price, before it goes up. You can take a non-refundable hotel and make it refundable by Hopper. And so that if you decide not to go, you swipe, your money is back in your account in seconds. You can buy disruption protection. This is one of my favorite ones. You arrive at the airport.
So you like all the disruption that's going on?
I don't like the disruption, but I like the fact... You're a fan
of airline cancellations. Admit it, Fred.
I like anxiety. I think anxiety is
high anxiety.
I love
So I was saying to Glenn yesterday, he wants people to chill. We got your back. It's the connected trip. You want people to have a lot of anxiety.
I want people to be worried that the logistics around the trip might not be great, and I want to provide a complete, delightful antidote to anything going wrong at a price point that.
So you're like a casino. You're betting that the price doesn't go up too much.
No, actually, everybody's chipping in $5, and if your price goes up, we make you whole. So it's not my money, right? We're not actually doing that. What we're doing is we're saying, look, it's not exactly we're on this together, but that's how any regulated insurance work. Everybody puts some money down and they buy these products, and sometimes prices go up, sometimes they don't. When they go up, or when your flight is disrupted, I might take $1,000 out of pocket and give it to American Airlines to make up the difference between your ticket. So we have moved tens of millions of dollars a quarter to hotels, to hotel chains, to airlines to compensate for the difference between what the customer decided to purchase and what ended up happening.
All right, so there's a lot there. Thoughts before we move on?
Pranavi, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's a great clip. And I like the comment around the casino. Does the house always win? Or in this case, and if that is the case and Hopper is the house, does it mean the consumer loses by, buying these fintech products? And I guess we'll discuss that a little bit in more detail throughout this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, the house is definitely winning, and they've created a business model that rivals are very jealous of, because Hopper, Pranavi, you could tell me what the numbers are. Hopper is making more money on these fintech products than they are selling travel. Now, when you sell a flight, that's a very low margin business. Some airlines don't give any commissions. They might give some very small commissions to larger players like Hopper, but they're making money on this, selling these fintech products. For example, one of the ones that Expedia pointed to was they offer 24-hour price freeze on a flight. And in reality, in the United States, the Department of Transportation, their rules are you can cancel a flight within the first 24 hours for free anyway. So What are you really paying for?
Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
Pranavi, I did want to get you in here. You are the expert. 2 months ago, essentially, you wrote a very in-depth report about Hopper. In fact, to say it's a deep dive is probably an understatement. Since Hopper is a private company, you had access to a lot of information, frankly, that just wasn't publicly available before. So before we get too far down the road with what's happening today and what's going to happen tomorrow, can you tell us, just set the stage for us about who Hopper is, what's their story, and how we got to where we are today?
Yeah, of course. So Hopper was founded in 2007. It spent nearly a decade building out this huge database of flight information that essentially powered their price prediction tools. But, they didn't actually sell any flights at that point. And then in 2016, they pivoted to becoming an OTA, selling flights on their app. And then in 2019 was really a key inflection point for them. They launched their first price freeze fintech product, expanded into selling hotels, car hire, and now private rentals as well as a whole suite of other fintech products. And then in 2021, it launched a B2B arm called Hopper Cloud, which is where it powers the travel capabilities of other companies, looking to sell travel products on their own platform. And really, it was this expansion into fintech and B2B, which has been, key drivers behind huge revenue growth that they've seen in the last few years, as well as market share gains. And to answer your question, Dennis, so fintech accounts for 40% of their revenues, whilst before 2019, it was 0. So in just a few short years, fintech, which is obviously much higher take rate, much higher margin than, just selling hotels and flights, for sure. Flights is a very low take rate business, has really contributed to the growth that they've seen. And, notably Hopper, they're also app only, and that really leans into their primarily millennial and Gen Z consumer base. And whilst these fintech products have really allowed Hopper such success, kind of coming back to the news at hand, it's clearly also the root of the current problems that Hopper is having with Expedia and Kayak and potentially other B2B partners. And, Expedia has cited that Hopper's products exploit consumer anxiety. And, we can get into this, but really, I don't see how Hopper's products are materially different to traditional travel insurance or even what Booking is doing with its connected trip vision. And I think Hopper's a very fascinating company, and we can kind of argue the pros and cons of this in this podcast. But, there are a lot of products, such as traditional travel insurance, which does alleviate consumer anxiety. And yes, I think some of the fintech products that Hopper has can be sometimes misleading. I think the bigger picture of Expedia coming out and so publicly rejecting its partnership with Hopper is more a reflection of how competitive online travel has become and how Expedia now sees Hopper, this disruptor to come in, and Hopper is a viable competitor to the likes of Booking and Expedia.
I just wanted to mention one thing about, Pranavi, what you said about the fintech products and how Expedia has jumped in and sees them as a very strong competitor. And one of the reasons, and I think one of the reasons the fintech products probably pisses off Expedia and others, is Hopper has the freedom to take all that money they're making on fintech and then undercut everybody else's prices by offering lower rates on the back of that fintech product. So very smart on Hopper's part, but also angering its competitors.
Let's jump back in the Wayback Machine here to last fall with you and Frederic Lalonde, the CEO of Hopper, on stage again to hear him talk a little bit about their business model and the money that fintech is unlocking potentially for them and others.
So if this is the holy grail, why aren't more companies copying you?
So they are. They're starting to work on it.
Yep.
A lot of the...
Google says they're not interested.
You have to be in the transaction.
Okay.
Right? Amazon's not interested in travel because warehouses don't really help, and it's probably the right decision. The other players are making a lot of money with their models. Look, I am super jealous of Expedia and Booking because they're great business, super profitable. Look, you take $5 billion, you put it into Google, and you get 7 back.
Right.
Like, who doesn't want to do that, right?
Well, Glenn was talking about the massive profits they make.
They do, and it's amazing. And they're very good at it, and they deliver a good service. But we think that fintech unlocks between $200 and $400 billion worldwide of new customer spend in the ecosystem. Right. It's a little tricky to build. You got to figure out, but there's no doubt.
I saw your signage all over the place. Partner with us, fintech, 3 times the profits.
Do you like free money? That's the pitch.
I like free money.
Everybody likes free money.
All right, there was Dennis and Frederick Lalonde on stage. And just for our listeners, when Dennis mentions Glenn, he's talking about Glenn Fogel, the CEO of Booking Holdings.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, do you like free money? That's good. That's a pretty strong statement to make. I think fintech has unlocked a lot of potential for Hopper, but I think since being founded in 2007, yes, Hopper has become this formidable disruptor of the OTA market, which has, been for so long been dominated by Booking and Expedia, and it's known for having these fintech products, being really tech forward, leveraging machine learning and big data, to power their flight prediction tools, etc. But really, I think the core value proposition of Hopper is much simpler than that. And I think, the first clip of Fred talking about Hopper's anxiety alleviating fintech products, but also the second clip about, free money and Hopper unlocking all that potential. I think there's a little bit more to say about Hopper than just, it's just this fintech provider. And I really got that sense when I spoke to the executives at Hopper when I was writing the big deep dive you wrote on Hopper, which is really that Hopper is led by first principles thinking, kind of desire to address pain points in the industry. And yes, they're much smaller, nimbler, younger than Booking and Expedia, and they can pivot strategy. But really, I got that sense that here comes a company that is looking at things with a different lens and offering a different product to what already exists, whilst the legacy players have been doing things the same way for many, many years. And really, it's that outmoded ways of working which has actually allowed and created that space for a company like Hopper to come in and gain market share. So I think there's more to the story than just, do you like free money?
In a lot of ways, what you just described sounds like the traditional tech disruptor trope, right? Nimble upstart gaining market share by pushing the boundaries of tech, and these legacy players are clinging to their old ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think Hopper is just taking advantage of these legacy players being too slow to kind of be with the times a little bit.
Dennis, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely a disruptor. The way they do marketing also is disruptive, and we could get into that. But I just wanted to say, nimble startup, no. They have $730 million in funding.
Upstart, not startup.
Upstart. Okay. Well, we're quibbling about word usage, but
Sure.
But anyway, and they've been around a long time. They started out trying to be another TripAdvisor, and really struggled for a number of years. Yes, but they're definitely disruptive. They don't do Pranavi, correct me if I'm wrong. They don't do a lot of marketing on Google, or at least not to the extent that Booking and Expedia do. They have their whole social commerce thing going, but I believe they are spending a lot attracting app downloads, like in the app store. So
yeah, I think I'll just add to that. 2 things I'll say. Yes, Hopper has been around since 2007, but it only actually started selling anything on its platform from 2016. So it has grown immensely in the last few years. And I think we've got to give them credit for that. And yes, on the second point of marketing, Hopper's strategy around marketing is very interesting. So whilst you have companies like Booking and Expedia that tends to have a fairly positive correlation between the amount they spend on marketing and how much gross bookings they get. So, that the $1 they spend on marketing spend correlates fairly well to the $1 of gross bookings they make. They're having to go out and spend that marketing dollar in order to get every customer every time, whilst Hopper is kind of going about it in a kind of different angle, and it's trying to it's got these gamification aspects. It's, trying to model itself on this Chinese app called Pinduoduo, which is this viral e-commerce app, which Fred talks a lot about a lot, and we can get into that too. But Hopper's trying to break that marketing spend, gross bookings correlation, and it's trying to go after product-led growth and increase that lifetime value of consumers such that once they spend that marketing growth, the consumer will stay loyal and they won't have to keep spending marketing. Though obviously, in order to do that, that requires a lot of spend on growth and development and research. And it's probably one of the reasons Hopper isn't profitable at the moment. And we can get into that too.
Before we do, let's listen to a clip of Frederick explaining the evolution of Hopper's marketing strategy on stage at Skift Global Forum.
We were notorious for not spending any money on search, on AdWords. We still don't do that.
I was going to ask you, how does this fit into your marketing strategy? How much do you spend on marketing?
Yeah. So, we were spending a couple $100 million like last year. So first of all, the money was flowing. It was much easier to raise. But moreover, we were heavily invested in social media.
Right.
And probably a lot of you got some of our stuff. We have an interesting guy in a bunny suit running around on Instagram, all this crazy stuff. But last year, we were TikTok's largest advertiser in the US, not just in travel, everywhere. Today, our paid spend is almost at zero. We are giving the same money we gave to Mark Zuckerberg and TikTok to our customers in the form of tree watering games. And it is working an order of magnitude better, but at a very small scale.
So, I think the marketing spend is a very interesting angle, and they're trying to model themselves on Pinduoduo, which the closest comparison in the West would be like Duolingo. So you would have to log in every day. And I don't know if any listeners here use Duolingo, but I get some very persistent notifications from Duolingo. It's very clingy, in fact, and I think Hopper is trying to do that, right? I think they call it the coffee shop moments, or when you're standing in line, instead of just scrolling on Instagram, you could go on Hopper and water a tree or whatever gamification aspect there is, and you would earn money from it rather than wasting time, scrolling and not earning any money. And it's a very interesting kind of thing that they're going after. But yes, it requires money. So
this is the super app ambition, right?
Yeah, it's the super app ambition, and I think I wrote about this in my deep dive a bit. They want to be a super app in travel. It's not like they don't want to conquer other parts. They don't want to sell they don't want to sell things on like what Amazon does or anything like that. But you do have to question: can a company like Hopper really reach the levels that Pinduoduo has kind of reached? Because travel is a purchase that you don't make frequently, whilst this products that Pinduoduo sells, it's everyday products like groceries or cleaning supplies or things like that, which is something that you purchase very frequently. But with travel, you have to question, okay, even though I'm logging on to the app regularly, I'm not actually making a purchase, maybe only once or twice a year. So you got to, there's that angle as well to consider. Like, is the super app vision really achievable?
Right.
And I have to push back on that. I mean, what is a super app in travel? I mean, we know what super apps are. You can order a ride share or grocery delivery. But like you said, they want to be a super app in travel. I mean, we can make the argument that Expedia is already a super app in travel. They offer everything. They offer cruises. They offer tours and activities. They offer more than Hopper does. So I wonder what a super app in travel really means.
Yeah, that's a great question. With all this in mind, their huge ambitions, this very rapid growth they've made in a short amount of time. Once Hopper set itself on a path to compete in earnest with Expedia, was this fallout just a matter of time?
Yes, I think there clearly is a competitive nature to Expedia pulling out of its partnership with Hopper, and I think especially since Hopper is known for discounting hotel prices, and it needs to do that in order to stay price competitive, especially since its consumer base is younger people looking for cheap deals, so they need to be price competitive, and it discounts and undercuts the prices by essentially giving up a share of its take rate, its commission rate, and then offsetting that loss by selling these high take rate fintech products and other ancillaries in order to prop up their top line. So clearly, even with Hopper gaining all that share and being a disruptor, if you just look on it, on the face value of it, Hopper's lower prices is in direct competition to Expedia's own prices.
And I would agree that it was only a matter of time. Hopper is up and coming and it's getting stronger. And that brings up another question. So where is Hopper going to get that hotel inventory that Expedia took away? There are plenty of places to get it. One possible avenue is Booking.com. It could also be hotel beds or different channel managers. But when you put in the competitive factor, would Booking.com really want to fuel the rise of Hopper the way Expedia did? Probably not.
How long can Hopper use that fintech money it's making to undercut competitor pricing?
Well, it's interesting. I conversed with Steve Hafner, the CEO of Kayak last week. One of those weeks, it's all a blur to me. And, Kayak was using Hopper's fintech products and they didn't really find value in it. But he was saying that Hopper is under pressure to start making some money. As Pranavi said, they're a 16-year-old company. They have $730 million in funding. Investors are getting very impatient. And Hafner thought that Hopper would need to trim its overhead a bit more than it already has. And he claimed that they're spending a lot of money on app downloads, and that he's going to have to, and Fred's going to have to rein in that marketing spend a bit more to start making some money.
Yeah, that's very true. Hopper has gained a lot of market share, but it's still unprofitable, and it won't continue to grow at the levels that we've seen in the last few years, especially if they kind of step back on the marketing side of things. And reaching profitability is key, especially before they consider a potential IPO.
Frederick did address this a little bit in that stage session with you, Dennis, and I will run a clip of that a little later on. Before we move on to that, let's address these tough words that are being exchanged by these two giants in the industry. At the top of the program, Dennis, you read Expedia's statement explaining their decision-making process. The TLDR summary is that Expedia believes Hopper is essentially confusing, pressuring, or otherwise manipulating their customers into spending more money. I mean, Frederick even mentions it in the first clip we played, I believe, that Hopper customers spend $50 more on average for the same trip. Where's that coming from, right? A consumer doesn't want to spend money just for the sake of spending money. Let's hear a little bit of Hopper's response. Pranavi, since we had Dennis read the Expedia statement, do you mind just reading that little excerpt that I shared with you?
Yeah, sure. So this is Hopper's response, which is also cited in the article that Dennis wrote. Although it seems that Expedia planned and delivered its notice in an anti-competitive attempt to cause disruption to Hopper's business, there will be no impact at all. Hopper has always had a multi-source strategy when it comes to our inventory. Expedia was one participant among many within Hopper's marketplace. And then they go on to say that Hopper will continue to be the best place to book travel.
Wow. It kind of gives me schoolyard vibes there. No impact at all. Thou doth protest too much. Clearly, there will be some impact, right? What are we to make all this? Are these just harsh words of partners turn rivals, or is there any merit here? Dennis, is Hopper manipulating consumers into needlessly spending more money?
They're a little bit sneaky sometimes. So one of the things that's hard, makes it hard to gauge Hopper is they're app only. They're not on desktop. And they're constantly testing different things. So for a while, for example, they had a default, you didn't opt into it to add a tip, at the end of your booking for Hopper. People weren't realizing they were paying this tip. No online travel company that I know of, no other one, charges consumers a tip without them knowing it. I think now it's opt-in. So there's some, questionable tactics.
Not too far off from what happens when you go to your coffee shop now. They just include a little suggested tip there.
Right. And there were other things like that, like VIP service, which allows you to call up a call center agent for help. They were adding that in, and they have things like price freezes on hotels and flights that are already fully refundable. And if you cancel the flight, you don't get your money back. You get a credit towards towards future value, towards future travel. So things like that. So there are some sketchy things. I think they might, have a good talk with themselves and rein in some of the wilder ones that they have, and it's also a problem for Capital One, their biggest partner, which is a bank and has to answer to regulators about some of these practices.
Yeah, I'd also add to that one of the things I learned when I was interviewing the execs over at Hopper is that, when someone exercises the option associated with the various fintech products, Hopper actually takes that risk onto its balance sheet. So say there is another, a black swan event like COVID, or even if there is a bit of a downturn and we're seeing suddenly a lot of people exercise these fintech products, that could potentially place significant pressure on Hopper's balance sheet. And it's definitely something that I am, wary about.
But you've mentioned in your article, or at least they rebutted that by saying that a lot of their products actually hedge one another, right? Can you explain that?
Sure. Yeah. So I asked the CFO this question, and they claim that their price prediction tools are like 95% accurate, and they're dynamically pricing their products, and they have sophisticated risk management strategies in place. So it's very sophisticated, and unless there's really a black swan event, they will be protected. And the CFO, I think he said that the risk today is like 10 times smaller than the amount of cash they have in their balance sheet. So, they are protected, and their fintech products are pretty varied, and they're fairly diversified, and they have natural hedges in place. So, I think they have covered their back, but there's, as Dennis has mentioned, there are a lot of issues with it still, like optional tip-ins and things being refundable when they aren't refundable, etc. So clearly they will have to make some, iterations to the product, and Expedia's comments are obviously pretty damning to their suite of fintech products.
Well, transitioning to Expedia, Pranavi, is Expedia being anti-competitive by not just depriving Hopper of its inventory, but by doing it in this very combative fashion, publicly accusing them of not having the interests of the consumers at heart?
Yeah, so Hopper has said that there will be no impact at all out of Expedia pulling out of the partnership. And they've said it's anti-competitive, but they don't think there's going to be impact. So, if you look at the numbers, Hopper has about 2 million hotels on its platform, and the majority of these hotels will be sourced through direct partnerships that Hopper has with hotels directly. And the majority won't be through these kind of indirect B2B deals with players like Expedia. So, Hopper is saying, okay, Expedia is not going to fund our hotels inventory. That's fine. We've got all these other direct deals, and there's not going to be impact at all. And then on the flip side, since this is a B2B deal, if you consider Expedia, Expedia will also not see a material impact from the loss of Hopper as a distribution channel. They didn't even release an official financial press release about it.
I have to disagree a little bit. Expedia is 25 years old, or no, they're more than that, right? And so they didn't get this hotel inventory overnight. It took years and years and years. And we're just talked about, Hopper having 2 million hotels. Well, maybe they just lost half of them or 800,000 of them or whatever. They don't have the resources to go out and build direct relationships with hotels. I mean, you can build direct relationships with some of the bigger chains, but if you go to Europe, a lot of the hotels are independent. Especially when Hopper is trying to trim its overhead spend. It would take an enormous amount of money for them to go out and hire a larger sales force, and it would take years to build direct relationships with hotels. So I think they're going to be hurting in the short term. They'll find a way to get some of that Expedia, some of the inventory they lost from Expedia hotel inventory from other sources, but I don't think it's going to be direct in a really material way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that the impact will be much larger on the vacation rental side of things, especially with the Vrbo brand that Expedia owns. And, vacation rentals, that's still quite a nascent part of Hopper's business. But I think just to add to that, this news of Expedia coming out of the partnership with Hopper, I think this will change the way that these companies think about B2B deals. And, in the last few years, we've really seen a flurry of B2B activity, and B2B has been a key growth driver for not just Hopper, but also Expedia. It's 40% of Hopper's revenues, but also it's 20 to 30% for Expedia, which is not immaterial. But the problem that I have with B2B is that it fundamentally increases fragmentation in the market, and it allows anyone to really come in and start selling travel. The barrier to entry is essentially zero with B2B. I mean, not entirely zero, but it really increases the fragmentation and allows these new entrants to come into the market. And so what we might see now is that B2B players like Expedia and Hopper might slow down in partnering with players already in the travel industry that they compete head on with, and rather focus on B2B deals with companies outside the travel industry, such as banks and credit cards, which are looking to offer travel products on their own platforms. I don't know if you agree with that, Dennis.
I don't. I mean, the travel industry
I didn't think so.
is renowned for its incestuous nature and frenemies working with other frenemies. I think this Hopper Expedia split was a one-off. I don't think we're going to see any slowing in B2B deals. I mean, Booking Holdings is committed to growing its B2B partnerships. It bought Get a Room a couple of years ago to help expand that. It's a strategic importance for Expedia to grow its B2B businesses. It is partnering with banks, as you mentioned. And even with these deals, I think there is still a significant barrier to entry. Partners have to share revenue with Expedia or Booking.com or whomever. And the largest, barrier to entry, you can get all these hotels from Expedia, but how are you going to get noticed? We were talking about marketing before, and that's the biggest barrier to entry. The $1 billion a year that Expedia or Booking spend on Google, just because you have an affiliate relationship with Expedia, doesn't get you those marketing dollars that you need in order to get noticed.
Right. Yeah. Frederick talked about spending hundreds of millions of dollars in customer acquisition prior to transitioning to their sort of internal marketing.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Dennis. So, yeah, I guess whilst Expedia pulling out the deal might not have a huge impact on Hopper's current hotel bookings, because they've said, we have other partners, it might instead have more of a long-term impact on kind of future B2B deals that Hopper tries to make. But, I just kind of backing Hopper's court a little bit. I think, as I've already mentioned, I think Hopper is nimble and it's able to pivot strategy. And I think its fintech products will likely see several iterations, but it needs to put in some more work into striking that balance between efficiently monetizing its products whilst, also offering a streamlined user experience that B2B partners will be happy to have on their platform, such as Capital One, these banks, but also partners within the travel industry. I wonder, Dennis, if you've heard anything from Hopper other than the statement they gave. I mean, do you get the sense that they're worried about it, or like what has the backlash been from Hopper and other B2B partners that partner with Hopper? Has it been positive or not really?
Everyone has gone silent. Hopper has gone silent. Capital One has gone silent. Which makes me feel like they're both worried and they're both feeling the impact. So I don't have any direct knowledge, but the fact that they won't tell me what the actual impact is, what they're doing, how they're responding. Neither Hopper or Capital One has been transparent about that. So I think they're worried and they're feeling it, at least in the short term.
The silence speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So before we finish up our conversation today, I want to look ahead. And to get us in that mindset, I want to play one final clip of Frederic Lalonde speaking with you, Dennis, at Skift Global Forum last fall, where he talks about his economic outlook and Hopper's 3 pillars of growth.
Now we're probably entering a recession. We're not feeling any of it now. Business is great. Everybody's traveling. I don't think
you think it's coming. And
how
are you preparing?
Well, the first thing is you got to cut your burn rate. So it's no longer cool to. And this is where my deep jealousy for the profits of our competitors comes from. They make money, which is great. So we got to close the gap. We're not burning a lot compared to a lot of these crazy things that you've seen recently. But we're not profitable. We need to get there. That's one thing. The second thing is you need to grow faster with less paid spend, because that's how you get profitable, which has to do with check-ins and bunnies and loot boxes and all this other stuff. And then the third thing is you need to be global. And the reason that matters at a real scale is because if I'm in food delivery, shipping sushi in Rio de Janeiro doesn't help me with my New York business. But if I'm in travel and somebody uses me in Rio and they come to New York, that's the high AOV, the high stay. Everybody wants that. So we got to become a global company. And then the third pillar of our growth is Hopper Cloud.
Yeah, super interesting clip, and I think quite honest, really, from Fred. And I definitely agree with him that their current run rate will slow down in the next few years. In 2022, they really saw big growth rate because they just launched their Hopper Cloud business and some fintech products. But obviously, they're not going to be able to sustain that into the next few years, especially if there's a economic downturn and a recession. And up until now, they have prioritized market share gains over bottom line profitability. But reaching profitability is really, really important if they really want to play amongst, the leaders of Booking and Expedia, and especially in the run up to a potential IPO, which I know Fred has talked about. That is an ambition for them. I don't know if Dennis, you have anything more to add to that.
I was just going to say, I wonder how this Expedia breakup is going to impact their cloud business. Certainly, it's not a reputational advantage when trying to make deals. And they've announced a number of these cloud partnership deals. But really, who's out there that's, we have Capital One, that's a big one. But a lot of these other ones, Kayak dropped its partnership, Expedia dropped the partnership. There are a few other players, but I don't know, how substantial they are.
Yeah, I think, I think it's still, it's 40% of their business, but it's, if you consider the size of the market, I think in my interviews with the execs at Hopper, they said that, Hopper Cloud could potentially be a $100 billion market, of which they have maybe over 1% of that market. So there is a lot to play for. And clearly Booking Expedia, with Get a Room and Expedia with its B2B business, they're clearly going after that huge TAM that is available, and it is competitive. And it'll be interesting to see how damaging Expedia's claims really are. But like I said before, I think maybe we might see that now these companies will stop powering the travel capabilities of other companies already in the travel industry and rather focus on companies outside of travel, like the banks, who aren't going to be as direct a competitor to themselves. So we might actually now see a lot of non-travel related companies enter the market. And if anything, that's going to make this even more fragmented. It's going to make the industry even more competitive. And, covering travel is never boring. It's one of the most competitive industries in the world. And I think B2B is just adding that extra layer to it. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Certainly not boring.
It sells newspapers.
Yes, exactly.
You mean Skift Pro accounts? It sells Skift Pro subscriptions.
Exactly.
Well, I think that plug is a perfect place to wrap this conversation up. We imagine there'll be a lot of news to follow here in the next weeks and months. So I encourage our listeners to go to skift.com to find not only this article, but all of Dennis's and our entire team's great reporting. Also, Pranavi's excellent research can be found at research.skift.com. Including this Hopper report that, again, really is unprecedented in its access to Hopper's financials and business model. Thank you both again for joining us today and for your great reporting and research.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This has been the Skift Podcast. Thank you for listening.